youth unemployment in South Africa. Okay, it's almost ready to go. Okay.
That you're going to start.
So as soon as the share screen disappears, then we're good to go. Okay, and that's going to happen like in the next minute.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good day.
Hey, Cash, you look glowing, by the way.
Some for me. Can you read that one, please? I think that is like what I want to do in the station. I was like, oh, you can go.
Welcome to this Youth Capital podcast. I'm Nicholas Bauer, hosting you alongside youth activist Hector Sonera. This is Youth Capital's discussion with political parties ahead of the State of the Nation address about youth development and the future of the presidential employment stimulus. South Africa is beset by many challenges, youth development being chief among them. 6 in 10 young South Africans are out of work in the world's most unequal society with the highest rate of sustained unemployment in the world. The presidential employment stimulus has brought some success in terms of providing opportunities to young people, and studies clearly show that once young people have their very first work opportunity, the ability to gain employment, it becomes that much easier. We're welcomed by several political parties, and hopefully we will be joined by the governing party, the ANC, shortly as well. I'm going to do a very brief intro before our first question. after which I'll hand over to our youth activist, Hector, who will be engaging with these political parties as a member of the youth community and decide and allow political parties to show what they would do were they elected to government after the 2024 provincial and national elections. Please do follow us on social media. That is, of course, on X and on YouTube. We're currently live on the Youth Capital South Africa YouTube channel. This is the Youth Capital Vodcast on youth development and the presidential employment stimulus with myself, Nicolaas Bauer. So we were supposed to be joined by the ANC. Unfortunately, their representative is yet to join us. But the other political parties that will be with us today is the Democratic Alliance, the Freedom Front Plus, the African Christian Democratic Party, the Patriotic Alliance, as well as political newcomer Rise Mzansi. Hopefully, the ANC representative, the ANC Youth League Secretary General, Xolo Ngudle, will be joining us shortly. We'll try and get a hold of him, and he'll be able to hopefully come after the other five that we'll engage with now. But let's get the ball rolling with the Democratic Alliance's Gisela Opperman. Gisela, thank you very, very much for your time. I need to remind respondents that we've only got 2 minutes per answer, so please keep them short and sharp. I'd like to know from you, as a representative from the Democratic Alliance, what is your party's approach to youth development, and what do you believe should be the future of the presidential employment stimulus? Gisela, please go ahead. Gisela, please unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody. I want to talk to you about what the DA can offer our youth. I looked at the figures last night and I saw that the presidential employment stimulus for last year alone, they were allocated 376 million rand, of which they only spent 57 million. So there is a huge backlog already, having money and not spending that money. The same was for the National Youth Service, and the same was for the pay for a performance. They received 400 million and they only spend 0 million of that 400 million. So it's a crisis in South Africa. I want to tell you, if the DA get to govern in 2024, the DA will launch an unemployment opportunity certificate to empower young people to break free from the constraints of the minimum wage, giving them better chances of finding jobs and transitioning into permanent employment. The goal then is to make it easier for young people to move into employment by offering flexible hiring terms. And we will also facilitate skill development, and apprenticeships will be established as a separate category, encouraging more employers to offer training. And we will also like to amend the Employment Equity Act, lifting regulatory burdens from medium-sized businesses and sparking job creation. And we'll also replace the horrible triple BEE model with sustainable development goals and reward businesses that contribute positively to the sustainable development goals, removing race as a criteria for redress and for the development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very short and to the point. You're within your 2 minutes. And we bring up next, just to clarify, we're operating in order of representation in the National Assembly, and I'm going to bring in the Freedom Front Plus youth representative, Tammy Breert. Mrs. Breert, what is the Freedom Front Plus's approach to youth development, and what do you believe should be the future of the presidential employment stimulus? Please go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Nicholas. Firstly, the Freedom Front Plus would like to see a shift from, as Gisela said, race-based legislation. We need to focus on socioeconomic stance, because the only manner in which we are going to shift to true employment and to see youth employment is and not political elite, is to see socioeconomic status. We need to also further do away with legislation that is actually focusing the private sector, that is legislating them into submission, if I can call it that. We need to see the private sector be encouraged to stimulate job employment. We need to see them want to create jobs, and we are currently not seeing that because of legislation. What the future of the presidential employment stimulus is quite sad. We see that it is said that 1.5 million jobs are created, but in reality, how many of those jobs are permanent? And that's the question that needs to be asked. The majority of that is not sustainable, has not rendered full-time employment, but is only partial, and then that cannot be taken as a success. What needs to happen is government needs to focus on, for example, bringing in tax cuts, tax breaks for businesses to actually encourage businesses to be able to stimulate, to employ, and specifically to employ young people, to ensure that young people get opportunities, and specifically in the private sector where we see the greatest opportunities and the economic advancement of South Africa will lie. So that is what the Freedom Front Plus says, and I believe I'm still within my time.
Oh, very well done. Also very short, to the point, within your 2 minutes. If you've just joined us, you're with the Youth Capital Vodcast. I'm Nicholas Bauer, hosting a discussion with several political parties ahead of the State and Nation Address. Youth development being a major issue in South African society. 6 in 10 young people in South Africa are without a job, in the world's most unequal society with the highest sustained rate of unemployment in the world. So we've spoken to the Democratic Alliance and, of course, Freedom Front Plus, continuing with the order of representation in Parliament. I'm going to bring in ACDP Deputy President Wayne Thring. Mr. Thring, thank you very much for your time. You have 2 minutes, and the question is, what is the ACDP's approach to youth development, and what do you believe the future of the presidential employment stimulus should be?
Thank you, Nicholas. Well, I think very clearly, let's just put this into context. When we look at the YES program, it has created, it says, placed some 100,000 young people, perhaps created over 1 million youth opportunities. But I think Stats SA has reported that we have an youth unemployment rate of some currently over 50% of young people that are unemployed. That equates to some 6 million 5 million young people, also 5 to 6 million that are unemployed. Of the 10 million young people between the ages of 15 to 24, we have 6 out of every 10 young people in South Africa that are not employed, that do not have not in education, neither are they in training. To add to that, during the COVID period, some 2 to 3 million jobs were lost. Thousands of businesses closed their doors. And currently we have some 700,000 graduates who have applied for the social relief grants. And so this highlights the problem that we actually have now, where you have some 5 to 6 million young people unemployed, but you only have the YES program placing 100,000 or so young people, creating over 1 million jobs. But those jobs also are not permanent. They're essentially for about 1 year, and then they go back into the unemployment pool. And so I think from the ACDP's perspective, we would agree with the CEO of YES, Ravi Naidu, who has indicated that the YES program is a long-term initiative, but now we need short-term solutions. And the short-term solutions is addressing the economic bottlenecks that we have in South Africa, addressing the challenges that we have in education, where within our grade 4s, we have some 60–80% of grade 4s that are functionally illiterate and cannot read for meaning. So clearly there's an education gap. And so we need to address the challenges of education. Secondly, we need to ensure...
Mr. Thring, final point there, please. You're out of time. Your final point.
All right. And then finally, I think we need to ensure that we don't have a mismatch between the education and the needs within the economy. And so we need to be able to join and ensure that there is no mismatch between the needs in the economy and education skills that are being currently provided.
That's Wayne Thring, Deputy President of the African Christian Democratic Party. You're with the Youth Capital Vodcast. I'm Nicholas Bauer, hosting it alongside youth activist Hector Somera. We're now going to continue with our discussion with political parties. Eugene Botha of the Patriotic Alliance joins us now. Patriotic Alliance, of course, not represented in Parliament as of yet, but of course represented in local governments across the length and breadth of South Africa. So, Mr. Botha, what is youth development? What does it mean to the Patriotic Alliance? And what do you believe as a party should be the future of the presidential employment stimulus?
Thank you, Nicholas. Good morning to all the panelists and the listeners. Thank you for the opportunity. I do not want to repeat all the stats that everybody's given. I think we can all agree that the youth are in a crisis. To propose evolution of current policy is probably not the best idea. I don't think the ANC's policies have succeeded. Our view on this is that it needs a radical overhaul. Our policy is to push for a national service. There are billions of rands being put into SETAs throughout the country at the moment. They're unaccounted for. There's leaks all over the show. Our colleague from the DA mentioned earlier that there's underspending at all levels. And a national service would certainly be able to bring youth in, the youth that are not in school, the youth that are unemployed, into national service and allow them to participate in the growth of the country and the economy, and to deliver much needed services. Service delivery is a massive crisis in this country. So a conscription styled model, not into a military as such, but into a national service, is something that we feel could practically solve this crisis in a rapid manner, and we could redirect a lot of funds. And that doesn't need us to reinvent the wheel with new certificates and new processes. It's just literally funneling the youth into a program that's already existing and just upskilling and equipping that program. We also find entrepreneurship is a valuable thing. You look at the Gayton McKenzies, the Herman Mashabas, the Richard Maponyas, the Elon Musks of the world. When entrepreneurs are supported and developed, they create a lot of jobs. And we think that this is something that cannot be divorced from youth employment. So we need to really focus on supporting our entrepreneurs. Finally, our township economies are being overrun by foreigners who don't necessarily have work permits. We see Cyril Ramaphosa interviewing a Somali foreigner who's got a tuck shop, didn't even ask him about a work permit. And legally, he shouldn't be operating a business there. And those are opportunities for our youth in the township economy to develop themselves and to uplift themselves and to get work. So these are things that we feel as the Patriotic Alliance needs urgent attention. Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Botha. Just over 2 minutes there, but thank you very much for your points. Finally, bringing out the tail, Effa Magera, last but not least, of course, Rise Mzansi, new political kid on the block, so to speak. What is your approach to youth development? What do you believe should be the future of the presidential employment stimulus?
Thanks, Nicholas, and thanks to Youth Capital for hosting this. Always good to be in the space of civil society who drives this change. Rise Mzansi has worked to develop a comprehensive plan around how do we deal with this, and youth development should not be looked at within a vacuum. It is part and parcel of any kind of initiative that we introduce to our social, economic, and political framing of the country. Part of the programs, like my previous speaker, was that we're going to introduce and capacitate the National Youth Service that is there, but make it work. Part of the challenge is that you have a government that doesn't work, and therefore lots of money gets wasted in spaces and things and programs that often don't bear the results we need. So the NEET rate, for example, that was mentioned, is it effective that young people are sitting and not upskilling themselves for future potential work? One of the things that RISE is introducing is an unemployment stimulus grant that will help us get young people able to work and look for work. Part of Youth Capital's research speaks about the fact that young people don't have the money to spend on finding a job, and that needs to be stopped in its tracks. Another additional program that will be is upskilling 1 million young people. Part of that 1 million young people is that they've not finished matric. We know the stats of our matric rate, but by the time young people get to that point, half of them have dropped out. And so we need to get young people skilled and get their ability to work heightened. I want to add that youth development is more than just getting people skilled. It's about ensuring the well-being of societies and of communities. Coming from civil society, we know that there's enough work. There's just not enough support for that work. And therefore, supporting of civil society is a big part of our program. In that is that healthcare facilities and well-being centers will be in every community so that young people don't have to travel within a 15 to 20-minute radius to look for work. Work can be found within their communities, and you develop spaces for themselves, but also particularly for Black women, for mothers who often have children who need care and support. That care and support work is equal to the task, and young people are the ones who drive that part of the economy. One of the other areas
Final point, please.
Final point is that we want to ensure that we develop constructively the creative arts industry. That's where a lot of young people are based, and we need to make sure that we get the stimulus targeted to that space where we can actually export the content that we create. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Irfan. Now, a critical voice is missing from this conversation, the voice of the youth. Everybody believes that they're young at heart, but young people are the people that should be at the center of this debate. And we are joined by a youth activist, a member of the Youth Capital Network, Ekta Somera. She is, of course, an accomplished author in her own right, author of Maiden Poetry and the founder of the Paper Trail Literary Journal. And, of course, also a member of the 2022 Mail and Guardian Young South Africans, of course, being recognized for her work in the space of youth development. Ekta, I'm going to hand over to you. It's the same sort of format. All of our panelists will be given 2 minutes to respond to Ekta's question. She'll be asking more or less the same question, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond. So Ekta, without further ado, please go ahead and begin your questions for our panelists.
Annika, thank you for having me. My first one is for Gisela Opperman. Many young people do not have access to the internet, which is necessary in job searching, and the cost of data is high. So why, as a political party, should young people vote for you?
Gisela, are you there?
Thank you. The DA has developed their economic justice policy, and we are ready to implement that. Within that document, we are going to introduce one-stop shops for small businesses and entrepreneurs to reduce the time and the cost to start a business. It will include Wi-Fi at these centers, so you don't have to worry about data. If you want to have your CV typed, it can be done at the one-stop shop. If you want to do your business model, it can be done at the one-stop shop. And we're also going to make it easier, streamlining licensing approval processes and providing support to ensure that we are able to meet all your needs at a one-stop shop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Short and to the point there. Ekta, please continue. Your next panelist.
Okay, Tammy Bree. Young people have to walk kilometers to job interviews. Many of us cannot afford public transport. So why should we as young people vote for your political party?
The one thing, and I'm so glad you asked this, Ekta, is we sat and we decided, what was it that you need? Young people are unemployed, people are unemployed. There is a great push to a basic income grant. Will that solve the problem? Yes or no? And there's lots of debates around that. And the Freedom Front Plus has said, what needs to be done is young people specifically, but people who are looking for work need vouchers. They need vouchers for transport. They need vouchers for internet. They need vouchers to be able to go rent a suit for a job interview. And that needs to be the focus so that you can physically empower these young people with the skills, with the necessary resources that they need to go out and find a job. And transport would be included in one of those vouchers to ensure that the people can get to and from a job interview.
Thank you very much. Also nice, short and to the point. Ekta, please go right ahead. Your next panelist.
Mr. Wayne Thering. Young people walk out of high school and are expected to be breadwinners straight ahead without the means to develop their own skills. So why as a political party should young people vote for you?
Well, I think the ACDP has consistently said, as I indicated earlier, that there's been a mismatch between what takes place when young people leave school and even graduates after graduating are unable to find jobs. The fact that we have some 700,000 graduates who have applied for the social relief distress grant is an indication of the fact that there's a bit of a mismatch between education and the skills required. And the ACDP will persistently push for the private sector. Private sector is not the enemy of government. Private sector the ACDP believes that government together with the private sector is able to create meaningful jobs. The fact that the YES program is also funded by the private sector is an indication, with some success, is an indication of what the private sector can actually do. So very clearly, we need to get rid of the challenges that we have in terms of the mismatch between skills required by the private sector as well as what the education sector is pushing. In addition, I think that we need to look at reinstating the apprenticeship model, because the learnerships essentially is just a few months training, but it can never compare to the skills that are required over a 2 to 3 year term in terms of apprenticeship. So the ACDP will also look at reinstating the apprenticeship model, as well as removing race-based policies. The BBBEE policies have been known to have failed, and it is one of the policies as well, in order to ensure equity amongst our young people, that the ACDP would look at removing.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. String. Also within 2 minutes. Hector, please go right ahead. Your next panelist, Eugene.
In many cases, it's not what you know, but who you know. And young people don't know a lot of people. So why, as a political party, should young people vote for you?
Thank you for the question, Hector. That's a very good point. Who you know, building networks is such a critical element of youth development. And I think let's put policy aside for a second. You've asked a very practical question. And as the Patriotic Alliance, what we've been focusing on is building our ward committees. We went from, in 2019, roughly 200-300 ward committees to current day 2,300 ward committees. That ward committee is a group of leaders in a community that we are tasked, or that we've mandated, with youth development. We have equipped them very often with a laptop, with cell phones. They have access to transport. So where youth needs help with a CV, needs help getting to a job interview, we have actual systems and structures on the ground to get them there. And so for us, it's not about the saying, it's about the doing. It's about putting in those structures in place. And the more support we get on a national level, the more capable we are building those structures. We see a political party not as a vehicle of policy only, but as a community system, and as being inherently part of building democracy. So I think as the Patriotic Alliance, it's more about what we've already done. 87 odd councillors, a third of them are youths, or under the age of 35. They're in council, and they're actively pursuing the youth agenda. And then on top of that, every single one of our structures have this mandate to assist with job creation, not only for youth, but definitely every youth has the ability to go to someone and sit down with somebody with a computer or a vehicle, or access to those sort of things. So the network is there. That is the network that we're building and that we're focusing on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Botha. Also within 2 minutes. Appreciate your timekeeping. Last but not least, political newcomer, Rise Mzansi. Ephraim Magera, please go ahead, Hector.
Young people are exposed to drugs and alcohol and suffer with substance abuse and addictions, which affect their mental health and ability to work. So why, as a political party, should young people vote for you?
Thank you so much, Hector. There's a big challenge that most communities we visited in the last year have spoken about as a result of the deep systemic barriers in society. Mental health and just the alcohol and drug crisis has continued. Therefore, Rise believes we need to persecute, the criminals who allow the drugs to have free flowing in our communities, but more so, don't criminalize and persecute, or rather don't prosecute the people involved in taking this, because part of our healing and care driven society is that we want to create services that are rehabilitative, so that people who have been alcoholics or engage in drug activity can find support in every community in this country. Proper rehabilitative services and facilities that are in all communities, and therefore driven through a care-based society and a care-based system. RISE strongly believes that we should not look at individuals and communities and families as outside of any kind of policy framework, and therefore we need to always center them in any conversation. Mental health services should be free and accessible within a 15-minute radius of any community. Therefore, you can have access to a psychologist or a professional should you need that. And that's part and parcel of the services that you'll provide from a healthcare facility. For the last 20 seconds, let me say that this problem exists everywhere, and young people are generally on the back end of it because the economic problem has not been solved. And therefore, we need to make sure we solve this by growing the economy and fixing the basis. I mean, Transnet, Eskom, these things hinder young people from growing their own businesses in their communities. Part and parcel of that is that they also face crime and criminality by the kind of mafias that demand money from them when they start their businesses. So I will leave it there, and thank you for the question.
Thank you very much for the engagement there, Hector. Some very, very thought-provoking anecdotes about being a youth in South Africa. Certainly drawing out the overall approach to youth development by our panelists. I want to thank you very much for you all joining us. Quite disappointing the ANC Youth League representative was unable to join, and Khulu Ngudle, the ANC Youth League Secretary General, was due to join us but did not. However, I want to take this opportunity to thank Gisela Opperman from the Democratic Alliance, Tammy Breert from the Freedom Front Plus, Wayne Thring from the African Christian Democratic Party, Eugene Botha from the Patriotic Alliance, and Ifa Magera from RISE Mzansi. Hector Somera as well, a youth activist, and of course a member of the Youth Capital Network, joining us for this conversation. And maybe allow me the final minute to encourage you as a young person, if you're watching this vodcast at this point in time, you need to go out and register to vote and take part in the upcoming national and provincial election. In 2019, only 49% of the overall eligible population that could vote did end up going to the polls and making their mark at the ballot box. The road to a failed state is paved with voter apathy. And if you're a young person that wants the democracy to work for you, go and make sure that you register to vote and vote on election day. This has been the Youth Capital Vodcast with myself, Nicolaas Bauer. Thank you very much for joining us for this short and sweet engagement on youth development and, of course, the future of the presidential employment stimulus. Remember to engage with Youth Capital on all our social media platforms. And, of course, also sign the petition for the continuation of the presidential employment stimulus that is up for review very, very soon. It is a fair amount of money that is well spent and provides opportunities to the youth in South Africa, where 6 in 10 young people are without work in the world's most unequal society with the highest rate of sustained unemployment in the world. This has been the Youth Capital Vodcast. I'm Nicolaas Bauer. Thank you very much for joining us.